Class Action Settlement House is our sponsored guest today, and the topic, like you see on the screen, is settlement opportunities for Strategic Source clients. I want to bring on Keith Deans, Chief Operating Officer here at Strategic Source. Keith, take it away.
Thanks, David. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Strategic Source Innovative Webinar Series. We began this series probably about almost 2 years ago. Since that time, we've delivered about 45 webinars to clients and organizations across the country, well, with the goal of introducing suppliers and solutions that are going to help drive cost reduction and revenue generation. As David said, today we've got Class Action Settlement House, which will kind of share some ways that you can kind of uncover those hidden treasures that are probably sitting in file cabinets and desk drawers when it comes to taking a look at where you can drive some additional revenue and profitability from your organization on some of the class actions that sit out there that are sponsored in some cases by government recalls or even from the original equipment manufacturers with regard to some of those recalls. So just to let you know, today's webinar will be available in about 24 hours. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Lee Carilli, President and Founder of the Class Action Settlement House, to talk about those hidden treasures and how you can increase some of the profitability for 2023 by taking advantage of those opportunities. So welcome, Lee, and I'll hand it over to you.
So the vast majority of folks, when they hear the words class actions, they kind of cringe. They think, oh my God, I don't want to do that, or they've had a bad experience in the past. What we do is we assist companies in filing claims that have to do with class action settlements that were reached in a federal court. Class Action Settlement House recovers funds from a variety of these class actions that make their way through federal court. We don't get involved in the legal action itself. We're not suing anyone. But what we do is we enter as a claim representative, and we file claims on behalf of our clients. A lot of the cases are often overlooked by folks because of those reasons I mentioned earlier, but they can be worth tens of thousands of dollars or more if you just put the paperwork in and get it done. So what we do is we analyze a lot of the legal filings, we process data, and then assemble claim materials and supporting documentation. And if there are any audits, we answer those audits and then ultimately get some proceeds in your pocket from the actions. How did we get started? Well, a long ways back, I used to work in the car business myself. I was a salesman. I started out selling cars in a Honda, Subaru, and Pontiac store back in 1997. The economy had collapsed, and we were in the cash for clunkers time, if any of the folks listening have remembered that. I ended up getting into this class action recovery business and started working with companies like Garmin and Penske Automotive and some microchip companies like Microsemi and other large companies. And what we did was we began aggregating a lot of data, getting these claims filed. So there's this perfect synergy, the perfect synergy of the automotive world and the class action world kind of came together in 2015 when we had the company I worked for in the settlement recovery world. They dissolved their corporation, and I started my own, and a whole variety of different legal actions started showing up on the docket all across the country. Okay, so we have a poll question here for you, and this question involves what folks might be able to expect from a typical class action settlement claim. So when you file a claim, what portion of your purchases do you think you're going to get back on average from the settlement itself? So if you spent $100, how many dollars would you get back? Would you get 0.2 to 0.4%? Would you get 0.5 to 0.8%, 0.9 to 1.1%, 1.2 to 1.5%, or 1.6 to 2.0%? So we got a whole lot of different answers here. The actual answer is a letter E. You get about 1.6 to 2% of the funds back that you may have spent. And this has a lot to do with the number of claimants that are involved and how much their purchases may have been. Most of the settlements are prorated, which means whatever the portion of the overall claim pool that you represent when you file a claim, that's the percentage of the claim fund that you'd end up receiving. Second poll question here. We had a settlement involving LCD products several years ago. These were liquid crystal displays. So it could have been monitors, it could have been TVs, and the end users of these products, like dealerships have a computer on every desk when folks are coming in and purchasing a vehicle. The end users received a certain dollar amount per screen. All right, so I want you to think about what do you think each screen was worth when the end user claimed it. Okay, we got a bunch of different answers here. Some people went on the low side, $14. Other folks went to the high side. It was actually $43 a screen, a pretty huge sum. So if you had a dealership that had, over the course of 15 years that had 100 screens, you'd have ended up with a little over $4,000 for those screens that you may have purchased over time. So that's a pretty significant chunk of change. What we do, again, is we are an antitrust settlement recovery company. Our core client base is this automotive industry. We serve over 1,000 dealers at this point in time. Many of our clients are owners that just have a single store, but we also work for large dealer groups as well, like Penske and Group 1 and Hendrick, Van Tuyl, a few others in the top 10. So we do have the ability to handle big claims, and we have the ability to handle smaller size claims and give a lot of personal attention to them. What do we do on a daily basis? So on a daily basis, we keep track of all these new class actions that we see showing up on the federal docket. We will take the agreements that are crafted in the courtroom, and we'll analyze and decipher them to find the nuances that can help us get you more money. We'll investigate those finer points, and then we begin to strategize based on the application plan that a company, an allocation plan that the claims administrator establishes. So they may say that certain items in the claim are worth more money than others, and we like to focus our attention on those things that will maximize a return. We gather some documents from you to support the claim, and then we will file it for you. Sometimes the claims administrator will audit a claim. They audit about 10% of all the claims that come through the pipeline. So we'll address the requests of that claims administrator, and we may come back to you for some information or some additional documentation. And then when we get down to the nitty-gritty, we're just going to make all your tasks like surgical strikes. We know that the car business is extremely busy because you got a lot of stuff going on in service, the parts department. There are sales teams working out there, taking the ups as they come through the front door. So we like to target precisely what is needed so you don't have to waste an extra minute looking for these items. Okay, why should a dealer use our company? Well, you'll be kept up to date on all the new settlements that come up on the radar. We're going to save you a lot of time by telling you exactly what we need to file a claim, and in most cases where to find it, whether it's the DMS system or the file cabinet or the parts department, etc. We're going to get you a lot of alerts when it comes to deadlines. We're going to call you, we're going to email you, and if we can't reach you from either of those two ways, we're even going to send you certified mail. We want to make sure you get your claim in and get the money that's owed you. We'd like to keep your dealer personnel working on selling and servicing vehicles. You're not a law firm. You're there to service the automotive world. So if you can't find records, we also have some financial forensic techniques that can use data that's related to the missing records, affidavits, to support a claim that you may not necessarily have filed just because you couldn't find anything. But we can find the sisters or brothers to those data and kind of reconstruct a purchase history to make those things work. So we have our first case to discuss here. We have several that we're going to show you real quick so you can understand what's involved. This is the Takata airbag liability settlement. There have been a lot of these that have already gone through the pipeline. This one is specific to Volkswagen products and Audi products. There's $42 million that have been set aside for these types of vehicles. And how it works for a dealer, you can't, if you're a Volkswagen dealer, you can't really claim your cars. The settlement is crafted in such a way that the brand of the settlement cannot have its affiliate filing a claim. But if you're a Chrysler dealer, if you're a Honda dealer, if you're a Nissan dealer, or a BMW dealer, and you took in a Volkswagen or an Audi on trade, and it was equipped with a Takata airbag, you'd be able to claim that vehicle. And on average, the vehicles in this case were anticipated to collect between $250 to $500 per car. We had some brands already go through the pipeline, and we're going to show you some information on that in just a bit. But the total estimated time commitment for something like this is about 3 to 5 hours. First, it's getting us a list of those cars so that we can run the VIN numbers against the database and determine if they actually have a Takata airbag in them. And then once we submit the list of vehicles to the claims administrator, they're going to ask us for some supporting documentation that establishes when the vehicle came in and when it may have gone out. Not the whole list. Usually it's a sample, and that will cut down on the time that you have to expend to get a return here. So here's just some of the recoveries that have happened to date in this Takata series. So if you took in a BMW on trade and that BMW had a Takata airbag, you would have received $105 for each vehicle that was so equipped. And you can see the other ones here as well: Ford, Lincoln, Mercury, Honda, and Acura, Mazda, Infiniti, Subaru, Toyota, and Lexus. It's a very strange case because it is paid out over the course of 4 years. And in the first year, you are, that's the only time that you can file for what's called a residual payment. And each of the dollar values you see here is a residual payment. We have the dealer management systems settlement. There are 2 companies in particular that have been brought to federal court under some allegations that, the data that is stored in their systems, who does it belong to? Does it belong to them or does it belong to you, the dealer? Very often they would sell access to this data to your advertising agency or other third-party companies. So there's been some litigation going on in this matter. Reynolds and Reynolds has settled for $29,500,000, and CDK is still litigating. We met the class counsel for this case at the NADA show in 2020 out in Las Vegas. He told us that he expected CDK to settle for roughly $100 million when all was said and done. We have a case involving local TV advertising. We know that car dealers do a lot of this. You would have to have purchased this advertising from one or more of the following companies: Hearst, Nexstar, Tegna, Tribune, Sinclair, Hearst, Dreamcatcher, Meredith, Griffin, CBS, Cox, Fox, or EW Scripps, Cox Media Group, or Katz Media Group. While we don't have actual dollar figures just yet, we have heard some information through some back channels that there's already about $50 million in settlements reached with a return on spend between 1 and 1.5%. The total estimated time committed from dealer personnel, probably 3 to 5 hours. We got to get a list of all the spots you ran. Those might be held by your ad agent. Okay. The payment card interchange settlement is another case that we're working on. This case involves the swipe fees that you have paid over the course of nearly 15 years. These fees we know are about 1.5 to 2% of the transaction, and we expect about 1.5 to 2% of that to be returned to claimants who actually participate in this one. There's about $5.4 billion available. It could be as high as $6.3 billion. There's an extra $900 million kind of floating around right now. And based on that, we've come up with a little formula that for every $1 million you have transacted through your machine, you're probably going to see anywhere between $300 and $400. So you can do the math on that one over the course of 15 years. There's probably quite a few million that have gone through those machines when you consider the parts department, the service department, and of course the deposits and purchases made in the sales department. The total estimated time commitment here is probably going to be about 2 to 3 hours. We say 8 hours as a top side because we're going to use information you get to us to locate data that Visa and MasterCard have to give us a total amount of purchases and transactions that went through your machines. So we expect it's probably going to take 2 to 3 hours on this case. It may take 8 hours if you have to provide supplemental documentation that would assist us in claiming a higher amount than what is presented by Visa and MasterCard. Moving on. So we put together some case studies for you so you can understand how we operate and how we're able to solve some of these problems that you would never have the time to do. So we had a big dealer group that came to us and they said they wanted to file a claim in the Takata Airbag liability settlement, but they didn't know if they were qualified. And if they were qualified, which vehicles could they claim? So we went through 600 pages of 6 separate settlement agreements. It's about 3,600 pages. And that we determined that they could file a claim, but that they could only file claims on pre-owned vehicles that were acquired via trade, that were purchased at the auction, and so on during the qualifying dates. So we knew that they could do it based on how the settlement agreements were crafted, and we ended up having to call class counsel to confirm that our interpretation was correct. And after a little, moaning and groaning, they said, we didn't consider that, and yes, the way it's written, they would be eligible to file a claim. So we were faced with another issue that was, how could the dealer prove that it owned the vehicles when they were never registered or titled to the dealer? Because usually when a trade comes in, you have the person who's trading it in sign off on the back, you hold the title for a couple of days, and if it's a wholesaler, they take the car and they run off to the auction with it, or they bring it to a used car lot. Or, very often you'll get one that's off lease, so you'll pay for the residual, get the car off of lease, and you'll end up having the title for the vehicle, but it's not put into your name just yet. You have a lien release and so forth that are processed with paperwork that goes off to the state. So using some of that automotive experience, we came up with a set of documents that we presented to the claims administrator that could prove that the vehicle was when it came in and when it went out. And some of those items included buyer's orders, odometer statements, copies of the titles that trader purchased, auction receipts, whether you went to Manheim or ADESA and so forth, Carfaxes. That was an item that we were able to get passed through because in certain states, Carfax will actually print the name of the dealership on both the incoming and outgoing transaction. And that saved a lot of time because it was one document that proved both. So the claims administrator looked at all these items. We'd given them samples, and they said, yeah, this would be great. We just want one that proves when it came in and when it went out. So we had to take the VIN number and run it against a database, which included all the VINs of all the cars that actually had a Takata airbag. So we started to theorize how long it would take to run 100 VINs or 1,000 VINs, or in the case of a really large dealer group, 10,000 VINs. We actually designed software that would take a list of the VINs and run them against the claims administrator's database at a rate of about 12 per minute. The software recorded whether the VIN was a positive, it had a qualifying airbag, or a negative. And we would refine our list down to only those potentially eligible vehicles. On average, it would take about 4 minutes to file a claim for an eligible vehicle. So that was the next problem we had. We said, how long would it take to file 100 vehicles, 1,000 vehicles, or even 10,000 vehicles? So we designed some more software that would take the list of VINs and file the claims at a rate of about 12 a minute. So it was recording a claim number, and it enabled us to file thousands of vehicles a day. Sometimes it would run for a straight day, a whole full 24 hours. We were getting 720 vehicles through the system per hour, and sometimes as many as 16,000 per day. And in total, in that first round with BMW, Mazda, Honda, and so forth, we recovered $11.6 million for our clients across 500 dealer rooftops. It was really a really great success story for us. So how do we work? We keep a percentage of whatever we are able to recover. We have arranged with Strategic Source to make that percentage 10%, except for Takata, which because of how difficult it is to navigate, it's about 12.5%. So all the other cases are 10. We have no upfront costs to a dealership or dealer group. We don't have any hidden charges or hidden costs. Any expenses that we incur, those are ours to keep. A lot of other companies that do what we do, they will charge 25 to 33% of recovery. And while we feel that the service we provide does have value, it shouldn't be a third of what's rightfully yours. So you working with us is like having an annuity, because once you're a client, we're going to alert you to every new opportunity we find. We're going to explain to you exactly what's required, how much time we have to get the work done for you. Very often, we'll have clients that come to us and say, hey, I just found a settlement, but you didn't tell me about it. Can you do this for me? And we'll say, absolutely. We'll be more than happy to assist you with it. Sometimes there are some oddball settlements that have to do with pharmaceuticals or insurance and that sort of thing. And we'll be more than happy to get that done for you and get the claim filed. So we do work in the tech industry, service industries, raw materials, pharmaceutical, insurance, logistics, and so forth. So some of the tools that we use to help with the discovery process, we like to define for you exactly what the eligible good or service is from which you can receive some compensation when filing a claim. We're going to help the dealer determine its eligibility with a very simple questionnaire, a couple of multiple choice questions. And once you're a client, we're going to navigate the places with you where we believe that data is hiding or living. Could be in the DMS, the deal folder, dealer financials. We had an auto parts settlement just for dealers based on parts that were in cars that came from the factory. That just paid its fourth round over the summer. Whether the details might be in Carfax or account numbers with vendors. And if all else fails, we'll try and work on that forensic purchase history concept with you, where we actually take those brother and sister data points and kind of put them together to recreate a purchase history. So what is the engagement process for you, the Strategic Source customer? It's going to be pretty simple. We're going to send you an email that has links to the various cases. Once you click on those, you're going to find a questionnaire that asks you some qualifying questions. Then you'll be able to read about the case. You'll be able to complete a form electronically and sign it electronically, or you can print it out and sign it manually and scan it and email it back to us. We're going to countersign, and we'll send you a request for a W-9 form. And then once we get moving along, we'll start requesting some data from you that we'll need to file that claim. And if we need supporting documentation, we'll also ask for that as well. We put all that together, we get the claim filed, and it gets into the claims administrator. This is my contact information. You can feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions that you may have. I'll be more than happy to answer. I can be reached at 727-330-7495. That rings directly at my desk. Okay. And that kind of wraps things up. I'll open up the floor for questions and answers if anybody has any. You can type them into your Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom, or you can, we have a question here. Let's see what we got. How long do settlements usually take? Okay, that's a great question. So settlements from soup to nuts can take 10 years. There's litigation that goes on, and then the settlement is reached. And then once the settlement is reached, they establish a filing deadline. So we have to get all of our paperwork and documentation in by that filing deadline. And then once the information is in by the filing deadline, there's a whole review process that happens. So they take each claim individually, they go through the data, they look at the supporting documentation, and they either approve the claim or they put it to the side for audit or additional information. From the point of the deadline when you have to file to the point where you actually receive money, that could be about 12 to 18 months on average. But we have seen some cases that have taken a lot longer than that. In fact, we are about to receive some checks for a case involving cathode ray tube products for end users. Those were the old big tube TVs and computer monitors that we had from yesteryear. That one has taken 7 years from the deadline to file the claim to actually receive payment. So that was a really long one. But we've had others that were very quick. I think the third round of auto parts didn't even take 12 months. So you can see there's a variety of different outcomes there, and that's because it depends on the amount of information being processed and the speed of the claims administrator in terms of reviewing product. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just wanted to remind people that to ask a question, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, like has been done so far. Click on that and type in your question, and we'll try to cover as many as we can. Here is one, Lee. How much is my claim worth?
Well, that's a great question. So claims are valued basically on a couple of criteria. The amount of items you may have purchased, sometimes they pay a dollar amount per item, and other times they will pay a percentage of your overall purchases. We have a very difficult time of estimating exactly what you might be getting, and that's the reason is we don't know how many claimants there will be, and we don't know the magnitude of their purchases versus your own. So we can ballpark it in the sense that we can look back at other settlements that are similar and say, well, we think because this happened in this one, you're going to get, 1.5%. And we'll be in the ballpark typically. But because of the unpredictable nature of how many claims are being filed and the magnitude of those claims, we won't know. Everything's pretty much done on a prorated basis when it's done by dollars. So the more you purchase, the more you're going to get back. And if it's just based on the number of items, like we had a recent settlement about 1.5 years ago having to do with EpiPens, which are, the allergy injector that a lot of folks have. The EpiPens are being paid, I believe they're being paid based on dollars, but then that LCD settlement that we spoke about earlier, that was based on, each item that you purchased. So if you had 100 LCD screens, you'd have gotten $43 for each one, and it would have been $4,300.
Right, here's another. How long does it take to get paid?
So that's kind of what Sarah had asked earlier. It's going to be about 12 to 18 months from the time the deadline is reached. And again, it could be longer than that. As I said, the CRT case was almost 7 years by the time we actually saw payment. All right.
Reminding people that you can click on the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. And there you can see, you have a chance to type in a question here for Lee as we get ready to conclude our time. But let's see, do we have another? Let's see. I see a question here. Is there an active list or a website of class action cases pertaining to the auto industry?
So there's, we have something that we provide to Strategic Source. It is a link that your account manager can provide you with, where it will give you the list of settlements that we currently have open, and you can click in on those, and if you decide you'd like to do something with them, you can, or you can email us and we can answer questions for you until you're satisfied that you'd like to move forward or just pass on that particular item. We are currently actually working on a new product that will make available to all Strategic Source clients that will kind of put together a list of all the settlements in the universe. I know that sounds ambitious, but we're trying to make it so that we can keep folks informed on everything that's out there, and you'll have the ability to follow cases and create alerts for yourself when critical deadlines are approaching. So that way, nothing's ever missed, and if you'd like to participate, there'll be buttons that you can click on that will take you into sign-up areas where you can put a claim in. So we're working on that. That's going to be across every industry, not just the automotive industry, but you'll be able to filter the cases.
Thanks, David. Want to say thank you to Lee and his team by coming on today to share a little bit more about settlement opportunities. I think one of the things that I realized in listening to some of the challenges that our clients realize and also want to take advantage of is there's quite a few details in determining whether or not you're eligible. And the great thing about that is Class Action Settlement House can do a lot of the legwork and the administrative work to determine your eligibility and help you really totally figure out how much you're going to be able to take advantage of. And again, in a lot of instances, this is going to be found money that's going to have an impact on your profitability in your organization for 2023. So thank you, Lee, and your team for coming on to share more about settlement opportunities and the process and how you can help our clients take advantage of those. Just as some of the housekeeping measures, we will have a copy of this webinar available in about 24 hours. If you're interested in receiving a copy of this webinar, please contact Chris Austin. You can contact him two ways. He's available via text message. You can contact him at 612-386-3898. Or if you'd rather email him, you can email him at sales@strategicsource.com. So I'll just repeat that. Text message 612-386-3898 or at sales@strategicsource.com. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today, and be on the lookout for our next innovative supplier webinar. I think we're going to have one more before the holidays get here, but we'll continue to do this throughout 2023, again with the goal of bringing you innovative suppliers that have innovative solutions to drive cost reduction and revenue generation. And with that, we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. With that, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Keith. And Lee, were you able to reestablish the audio on your side? To see that you are logged in on that.
I believe so. Yes, I think we have audio.
Yeah, feel free to give any closing comments as I prepare to bring up the post-session survey.
Absolutely. If you come up with any questions or you have concerns or you're worried, oh, well, if I file a claim, is my vendor going to come after me? Those things don't usually happen. These are settlements that the companies are making because they don't want to admit to any wrongdoing. So they're making a set aside to kind of make the issue go away. So if you have questions about anything, please feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you and get you information on additional cases that may be coming down the pipeline. We see a couple that we're monitoring right now. There's a Facebook and a Google AdWords case, each two different cases where we think that there's going to be a lot of value for the automotive industry, especially because we know that a lot of your customers are coming through the web and are clicking on these pay-per-click type ads. So we're keeping an eye on those. There's no details yet on settlements. They're still litigating and in the process of discovery, but they're going to be very valuable to those budgets that you've been allocating over the last decade or so.
All right. Thanks for delivering all of the content today, Lee. And we did hear from Keith, and we are with the post-session survey up on the screen. Just 2 questions. We'd love to get your feedback on the time spent to make these sessions as good as they possibly can be. So thanks everyone for your attendance today, and we look forward to you joining us on future webinars with Strategic Source. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.